Roll20 takes on Space Station in our second match of the day. I've got a bone to pick with these teams. Where the heck is Kel'Thuzad?
I got a bone to pick with him too. Or maybe an ice pick or a glacial
spike.
There we go. I've got that to pick with him because I agree. I need me some Kel'Thuzad. I hope this is the series that we get it. I'm pretty surprised. I do think that beyond the hiding of strategies and all the things going to Lake, which maybe is why we don't see him. I don't know. I thought there'd be more reason to just pick him, right? Just go for it, right? It's Kel'Thuzad. It's not going to have that big of an impact. Let's just see what you can make happen. But the lack of Kel'Thuzad almost screams to me it is meta enough that they just don't want to pick it. Be like, nobody knows where we think he's worth, and nobody knows what we, generally think about the hero, how we're going to build it. Just get it a big old question mark.
Well, we didn't have it with K1 Pro, but I believe in you, Prismaticism, or maybe Talking Trees.
Anybody.
Somebody.
I'll take Justin. I don't care.
Yeah.
Anybody. I'll just play the hero, please. We need this.
Well, before we get into the series and hopefully our first Kel'Thuzad in North America, we've got to talk about the standings because we kind of highlighted it at the beginning of the day, but it is not locked that Roll20 stays in the #1 seed from North America. Team Freedom can still take it. So what Roll20 needs is in their final match versus Team Freedom's tomorrow versus Tempo Storm. They need at a tied record in the series or one game better, obviously, but tied will do it for them. So if both teams 3-0, it's Roll20 who takes the spot. And because of that, we know if Roll20 3-0s today, it's theirs. Roll20 will be the #1 team in North America. But on the other side of that, there is a possibility that we go into a tiebreaker match with those two teams. If Roll20 gets a 3-2 and Team Freedom 3-1s Tempo Storm, which is things aren't possible. We don't know about Space Station. We don't know about Tempo Storm. Then we could have a tiebreaker match on Sunday between the two to figure out who's the #1 team in NA.
But I feel like of all the teams to set them, will you risk an extra game? North America may be goofed to put that in the hands of Roll20 because they're pretty good at just going, all right, that's a quick 3-0. They are by far the most dominant team we have in North America right now. They are the most effective of just kind of getting the job done. And just if you're a lesser opponent, they make you look like it really, really quick. So it is possible, but, let's be real here. Roll20 is the team that will just flat shut you down.
And Roll20 doesn't need to hide strategies for playoffs. They're already in HGC finals, whereas Space Station does. So there we go. Let's get into it here for both of the teams about this match.
Into the Gale Force series, we actually prepared like 2 weeks pretty much for that. We thought we'd get the 3-0 going into that. We were pretty positive, so it happened. I think Space Station is actually a pretty solid team. They just are pretty inconsistent. Their draft is pretty predictable because they crutch on a few picks. But overall, I actually think they are a pretty solid team, and you can't underestimate them. Going into the Space Station match, I think we're all pretty positive that we'll get the 3-0 and get the 21-1 record.
I think Roll20 is going to be a very tough opponent because, in my opinion, I think they're probably #1 in North America. So Goku especially made like the biggest transaction because Glau and Goku had hero pool issues where like they overlapped each other. But I think Goku has definitely like stepped it up to the point where it's like it doesn't even matter anymore because they both now play somewhat different heroes and they play them like really well now together, especially. If we could take a couple of games off of them, that would be great, especially if we win. Like, I think that shows a lot of promise in us. If we take some games off of Roll20, that means that Freedom has to win their match, and they will be #1, which is a possibility. So, I'm sorry, Goku, but we're trying super hard.
Tryhards. Does that mean Kel'Thuzad?
It means Kel'Thuzad. I said it is law, and therefore it will be.
And
I'm just hoping.
And so it will be that we see Kel'Thuzad in this NA match. No, but for reals, it's cool to hear that Space Station want to bring it to Roll20. They feel like taking some games off of Roll20, even the series gives them some credibility almost.
And, the rivalry there, not real rivalry, that was definitely on a friendly level. But Goku, Trees is coming for you, man. He's in the line of sight. It was actually really cool to talk to Trees, talking about the perspective and the transition of Goku, who honestly probably has, out of all of HGC, I think the coolest narrative, right, and story of what's kind of happened to him, his performance, the teams that he's been able to play on, and the trust that they've ended up giving him. But he was highlighting that he has essentially made the most profitable exchange of any team, of any player so far, and the biggest thing is that it's because of his own play that he's been able to perform when he was asked to do so, even when making the transition away from Superstars into Roll20.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Goku.
I am
and
too.
It's hard not to be with the performance that he's brought, the changes that he has had to make in order to fit in with this roster, and go for possibly the 21-1 as we get ready for this match. Let's start with the cheers for both teams. We're looking at Roll20's first. Gladman at the top there. As we go down, Craters has shown up here and there on some of the cheers too.
We've had Physica Optica, I believe, show up on a few too, but Spacestation Gaming here.
Sophist!
The real Sophist. Sophist up on the leaderboard. I like that. Now, you know, I wonder, I feel like that is quickly going to be a who on the crew of any kind can
defeat,
get the most cheers.
Take down the Sophist.
Take out Sophist.
If you guys don't know, Sophist is our lead admin for HGC. Thank you for supporting your favorite team. No, he's got to stay. He loves them all. He loves all the teams.
All the teams
he's
equally.
Unbiased. But yeah, we now have Space Station. You can cheer for them, which means you can unlock Space Station items and support them in their new iteration with their sponsor. It's pretty cool. Love making the space memes, space puns.
Yeah, I was trying to come up with one right then, and the fact that you said it, I choked a little bit, to be honest. So, sorry, unable to come up with something creative here for that one. But I agree with you. You know, anytime we see them being played, it's pretty hard to not just be like, wow, you know, it's out of this world.
Gosh dang it, I just had that in my head and you took it, you jerk. Game 1 is going to be a Battlefield of Eternity. I can't talk to Dread now for the next couple of minutes.
That's going to be a challenge, considering your job is to, in fact, have a conversation with me
I forgot.
about Battlefield of Eternity here. Roll20 is the one taking us to that. Spacestation Gaming's got to be a bit concerned as Roll20 looks deadly on BOE. BOE had a resurgence in North America a long while back, and Roll20 was the team, it felt like, who brought it back to life. After essentially Bob Ross Fan Club / Naventix / Lag Force, that iteration, they were the only teams to kind of hold true for a long while in North America, died out, and then Roll20 was like, nope, this is ours. I believe it was as early as Phase 1 Part 2 that they started prioritizing this map.
Yeah, Battlefield of Eternity, and then they've gone on to have some other battlegrounds that have been even more favored, but Battlefield of Eternity has never gone away. It's always been a big battleground for them to try to secure a win on, a pick for them, and it is a pick sometimes for Space Station 2, but it doesn't have the same kind of weight. Space Station is 2-5 on this battleground, whereas Roll20 in Phase 2, 6-2, so things look really good for Roll20 to get their first victory here. Space Station back to their standard Ban Medivh.
And it makes sense against a team like Roll20 to be able to rid of that hero. Glarong the first to make it seem formidable and just such a respected pick in the North American scene, and then they rid of ETC. No surprise there. We talked about the rise of it a little bit over the last series, but the biggest thing is if ETC has a map, it used to be argued it was Battlefield of Eternity. It was because his old passive, though, increased the auto attack speed. We know it does armor now, but he still has the synergy of having 2 hard crowd controls to make sure you can follow up the stun with those Immortals. So it's not surprising to see Roll20 rid of it, but Space Station, they locked themselves a Talking Trees Genji.
Talking about the ETC some more too, both of these teams have high priority on him, but we've seen more flexibility and moving away from ETC as of late for justing. So for Roll20 to be able to just ban ETC sort of cripples, I would say, Space Station a lot more than Roll20, just because Roll20 have had justing in the warrior position for a long time. Casanova, he is terrifying on ETC, but he's been working on bringing in warriors one at a time as he can, accruing warriors that they feel really confident with. So taking away that crutch, that really good hero comfort from Space Station Gaming may be what ends up allowing Roll20 to win this game.
And I really like the high Lucio that we see from Roll20 by picking that up, because the Genji automatically goes, do you want the Malthael? It's Battlefield of Eternity, it synergizes with that Genji, and again, it accents the map. So you just pick the Lucio, it decentivies any option to move into that Malthael, and Space Station agrees. They picked themselves up in Uther, which I wasn't going to say the name because it felt almost neglected in the last series to the point where I thought I was just missing something. Uther was picked up. He was even looked at here in this series before the secondary ban, where he was almost untouched in the last one, to the point where I was like, was he banned and I'm missing something? Like, did somebody not inform me that Uther's not pickable this week? What's
even more weird is that it is Space Station, although they have Genji, but that is not traditionally...
Yeah.
Space Station's second highest hero played is Kharazim. They are the highest playing Kharazim team in all of North America, and they also prioritize Rhaegar a lot more than Uther. But it makes sense here that they get the Divine Shield and Genji, enabling Talking Trees on this hero. We've got the Abathur ban, so at least there's not a second Genji to deal with now.
But it does kind of create a bit of a pickle here into the draft for Roll20 by banning out that Abathur, concern towards that. Then it goes, well, if the Lucio was purely over the Malthael incentive, you didn't rid of it, so is that a must pick for you now? And if not, it just shows that maybe that Lucio is for a different reason here, that the Malthael is not necessarily the justification. And we talked about it before. Though Lucio is becoming more and more prominent in North America, right now the only correlation seems to be directly related to Malthael. And we are yet to see an argument even against it. Last series where we saw maybe it show, it quickly through the draft was like, nope, it's just because of Malthael once more.
Rhaegar ban for Space Station, limiting the double support options for Roll20. Roll20 so far has only shown double true support, not Tassadar, not Medivh on Brax's holdout. But already having Vala could lend toward that sort of hyper carry style. And Space Station at least wants to take away Rhaegar, who with Lightning Bond can do a lot of damage to the Immortals along with the race. Next two picks for Roll20, still waiting on Justing, his hero. Vala could be Glaurung, could be Prismaticism, but in the past, Roll20 has loved to get Li Ming in around this area on Battlefield of Eternity right after the second bans.
But because this is the new patch and it's Roll20, it's going to be Kel'Thuzad.
Of course.
It's very apparent that, I mean, there's essentially nothing else to pick in the slot other than Kel'Thuzad.
Yes.
Yeah, so...
Not a Chromie.
So we'll get Kel'Thuzad plus whatever the other pick is going to be. And, I'm just stumped, really. Because beyond Kel'Thuzad, what else do you need in a draft? Really,
They could just go in with 3 people. Tyrael.
Why do you have to be right? Like, I
didn't want to be right here. I wanted the Zod too.
You want the Zod. We need it. Roll20 maybe could pick it, but it does not look incentivized. Already having one mage to go into another, it seems a bit too far out there. But a high Tyrael doesn't indicate some form of a all-in style death ball. They've already got the one reset. They might want the Malthael for themselves as that last pick. Talked about that before, and it's still fine as that last pickup for themselves. But first, we got Space Station Gaming. What do they want? Nobody is there to enable. Automatically, you go, Lunara's got to be a problem here, right? But they don't.
Yes!
We got it. We got the Zod plus his Zeratul. I wish I knew what that meant, honestly. Other than immediately I go, well, that's a huge amount of prep for AoE damage from, honestly, one of the highest damage globals in the game. Normally, when you have Zeratul compositions with Wombos, you're like, well, what about the setup? It's really hard to be able to get that setup. But not so much when Kel'Thuzad never has to risk his positioning. It's a global, right? So that is already going to be very huge. The sieging capabilities stand out on a map like Battlefield of Eternity. But it's also Space Station Gaming against Roll20, and I'm not confident that Kel'Thuzad's going to come out looking as hot as maybe he would.
I'm a little scared, though, because I think we're going to hear a lot of, oh, let's break it, and then just death. Look at that, Zeratul, Kel'Thuzad, and Genji. That's so much damage. Roll20 is opting to just get as tanky as they can between the Tyrael and Dahaka.
Yeah, that was a very heavy adjustment in the draft from them, realizing that we need to stop this damage output. And they're going to do so with that Goku on the global. Kel'Thuzad, Zeratul, and Nubarak, Genji. Let's start with how laning plays out, and then we'll worry about fights a little bit later. Because I think we need to first consider what is Space Station going to go and do levels 1 through 4. We know Roll20 wants to play slow. They've got the global, no global on the other side, so automatically slow. Soaking play from the side of Roll20 puts a lot on the side of Space Station Gaming. Zeratul has to match the Dahaka, but he can't match the exact same lane because he loses the trade in terms of siege. He has to go the opposite direction, so somehow the 4-mana Space Station needs to be very lethal without Zeratul itself for the early stages. Slow it down, keep on even footing, and then maybe something later on post-10. But I don't see a world pre-Blight stacks, pre-10, that Kel'Thuzad and friends really stand out here. He is very much reliant on getting the 70% bonus ability damage.
And this is Battlefield of Eternity. You have to be good from the start of the game.
Yes, and that's a bit concerning as well. The Kel'Thuzad here to come out on BOE. Didn't even think about throwing that one out quite yet, but it might be a trade-off here. There are positives, though. It's long area where you stand around for long periods of time. Mages poke in what Kel'Thuzad, he should be prepped, right, to be able to get those things. It's just, if your opponent gets one upper hand and they all in the Immortal, we don't care about that downtime, right? So it's just near essentially flawless play is being asked here for Space Station Gaming.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Roll20 gets a lot of what they like. They have Li Ming again, back on Battlefield of Eternity, an old classic for them, an old standard. Let's see how it holds up to the Kel'Thuzad, the Zeratul, the Genji of Space Station in Game 1.
In the blue is Roll20. Galarong is going to be on your Vala. We have Justing repping onto the Tyrael. Goku is in fact on Dahaka. We've got Li Ming played by Prismat, and last is Buds on Lucio.
And in the red, Space Station Gaming with Tiger
JK
playing Kel'Thuzad, Jason playing Uther, okay. Casanova playing Genji. Daihu subbing in, playing New Barak, and Talking Trees playing Zeratul. So
Well,
there's no Equinox here today.
So there is no Equinox here today, but we got Daihu.
Yeah.
Daihu's been here before, I believe for Space Station, or for Superstars, excuse me,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
He came in, made a very good impression, had honestly brilliant play on the front line. I mean, obviously it's a setback not having Equinox, not having your core roster, but very formidable sub here for the members of Space Station Gaming. But it's led to some awkward, role swaps.
Yeah.
Tiger JK is, in fact, not playing a support.
I think even with Daihu on tank, it doesn't explain the Jason Tiger JK swap so much.
Yeah, I do feel like a bit of this may be just, I mean, let's be real here. Other than shutting out Roll20 for the sake of shutting out Roll20, which also, keep in mind, may not be considered as changing the outcome of what was already inevitable. Good synergy there. That was 2 stacks, excuse me. But if we can see Tiger keep that up, I'm sure that maybe, I guess I'm not sure. I hope that maybe he'll be impactful here in this game. The last thing I want is a Kel'Thuzad coming out and just, he's just dying left and right here.
If he can land the palms, he can land the combos.
Is that how that works?
I think so.
As a dude who's played support and isn't the world's best Karazim, I can definitely say my Kel'Thuzad is far better.
A lot better.
Yeah. The one thing at level 1, going in with the W, specifically, oh, hold up here. No.
There it is.
No Q left for Roll20, and that's first blood over to Space Station Gaming.
Yeah, they've got that Blighted Frost
Versus
that you were talking about.
Yeah, versus the vulnerability coming out at level 1, focusing on that 15 armor capabilities. The 0.5 second snare does increase for more likelihood of having the opportunity to get that burst because they're going to be locked down, but you always got to be wondering, was this worth potentially shredding 15 armor?
Yeah, it's the armor shred versus in this, being able to get the increased root duration will help make sure that you can land those combos once you have the blight stacks. And then before that, getting the extra damage in the center of Frost Nova. And it worked out there. They were able to get first blood. Now we've got an immortal phase starting. And it's Roll20 who are losing out on some of the health of their immortal.
When it comes to that Zeratul side soak I was talking about before the draft, it's going to match that Dahaka wall. Roll20 sent Li Ming to pressure down below. Very well done from them, forcing Genji to now match them for the experience. Good chain combo for Tiger JK, 2 more stacks on top of that. Not able to hit the snare though. I will say moving forward, I wonder how much are we going to have to ask of Kel'Thuzad players to be successful, right? Is that acceptable to miss that, right? Because in theory, he should be able to hit 100% of the time, and is Kel'Thuzad too reliant on his passive to be able to, look at that and be like, they're gonna be fine. Much like with Abathur composition, Toronto, where does that spike sit now that we get to see some competitive Zod? Wow, excuse me, Zod, right? That's where we're going with?
Zod.
The Zod. I like the voice crack more than anything. The Zod.
Oh, Galarong is facing damage on all fronts. There's Casanova in the back. Zeratul was there too, but Buds gets a boop, hitting Casanova.
Bit Akko Taco there as Prismat threw out those magic missiles, and the boop was in the opposite direction, but can't win them all here, Gilly.
That is true. On the topic of Kel'Thuzad, it might be probable that as the team starts to get more of the synergy going with this Zod and with the Anubarak, that once Tiger JK hits someone with the chains and he knows that he's going to be able to pull people in, you can have the follow-up damage from Daihu. But, of course, we're also just waiting until level 7, until Glacial Spike, and that enables Tiger JK a lot with his combos, too.
Yeah, and Tiger JK is very concerned about the melee damage coming out from that Vala here. Moving into Armor of the Archlich at level 4, that was not what I expected to see picked up here at this talent tier, to be honest.
Yeah, that is not generally what we see there, or what we did in Europe, but still trying to develop what it is going to be the norm. Yeah, the standard. It does give some more slows and the physical armor, so it's kind of like a frost armor for Jaina, right?
Yeah.
You get the attack on there, or if you attack her, you get chilled. So turning around and being able to immediately land combos, Zeratul could be there too. It makes it scary to get get close to Tiger JK and try to damage him.
It essentially makes it to where any melee that wants to move up into him is vulnerable to the turnaround combo. Yeah, normally we did see Frost Armor on very heavy dive like Zeratil's into Jaina's, but the trade-off worked against all melees. Very good combo there thrown out onto Buds, and this is where I did expect him to stand out as a hero, is when he is sieging. Because the chains last for 4 seconds onto a target and they can stand on your opponents, that means you can set it onto the fort and then an entire hook range distance you have lethal into a chain combo. But talking about lethal, that's Goku's brush dock up above, just barely out of drag range was Tiger JK, and when it's all said and done, he will end up falling. Oh, Justin comes in with that follow-up and the smite over the wall?
2 kills for Roll20, and even though they lost the first Immortal, things seem to be starting to work out for the members of Roll20. Back to the topic of level 4 for Kel'Thuzad 2. The general that we thought we were going to see was Phylactery, and that requires you to pick up globes, and we know that this isn't the normal globe map too.
Or shielding on your chains. I don't remember the direct talent off the top of my head, but the the synergy that you get out of the shield, I mean, just the shielding alone is a lot higher than the Phylactery, and unless you're going to, I don't know, Phylactery I'm torn on versus the self-shielding across the board. I can really see the argument, especially competitively, right, to be able to come back from life, but definitely in the solo queue front, the direct value out of the shielding seems to be standing out for a lot of players here. Well,
even the spell leech that Phylactery gives too, but that might go away because that's already been nerfed and you have to have the 12 globes in the next patch, the balance patch for Kel'Thuzad.
It's an interesting situation here, but we still got the Glacial Spike there at level 7, so things not too wild there. That's when I'd be like, all right, I don't understand Kel'Thuzad anymore here for Space Station Gaming.
Speaking of that Kel'Thuzad, we are sitting at 7 stacks of the Blight in his Master of the Cold Dark trait.
Definitely not where you necessarily would want to be at this stage in the game. I don't have a competitive what you can assume at this point in time, but I'll say, again, from a more solo queue perspective, you would, without a doubt, want to be probably 15, 16, grounding the 20 mark at this point in time if you're all according to plan. If you're really nailing it, you've already gotten it.
Gerard, every time we cast Roll20, it's so weird because they lose an Immortal. They lost 1 kill. They did get a couple of extra kills, and yet they're just a casual level ahead.
They are willing to take fights a lot of teams don't, right? So when you saw Roll20 up on top, even though they lost the objective, they understood the power spike over the fight versus what they would lose on the Immortal and how much time they can commit to the fight versus how much can be committed to the Immortal. And they're one of the few teams that is willing to go, I have 10 seconds. And if you're willing to give me a fight over 10 seconds, I will take it, I will kill you, and then I'll walk away. And during that 10 seconds, I'm just going to see if you're willing to mess up. And with that poking around, they see if you do. If you overextend, they go past the Immortal, they take the fight, back out, attend to it accordingly. They essentially set time limits on themselves on how to be effective with their transitions, and that causes them to never waste a second of experience.
Oh, coming into that incredible shot calling of Glaurung, there's a cleanse, a hand of protection from Jason, but it's not enough to save Genji's life. He'll be the first to fall in the fight as Roll20 get heroic ability. Space Station backs off, giving Roll20 the next Immortal.
Giving them a 19, roughly 1,000, as I say that, being chunked down by Space Station, but it's a beefcake there. 75% shielding, no 10s available. When it comes to the anti-siege, how good can Space Station Gaming defend with their composition? Kel'Thuzad is pretty good in that department. All the rest of them, I want to say the word is poor, but I feel like that may not be doing it justice. They all want to move past the Immortal and fight, but defending the Immortal is the biggest element when its shielding is this high, this healthy. And now they're even responding while they are miles away from the 10. Space Station Gaming's taking colossal risks here.
This is pretty scary. Is Justin willing to dive in? He has his own shielding. Has the healing from Buds too.
I'm amazed Roll20 did not just all in that fight right there. That seemed very much like them just going, well, I can do basic math here, and without a 10, this is going to be an easy fight. But they play it slow.
Yeah, now the 10 is here. Talking Trees, rotating around the side, finds Prismaticism with the Singularity Spike there, and the Void Prison has gone down. It's time for Space Station to try to turn things around with their combo.
The Wombo, the Sanctification says nigh, and they turn it around. Roll20 just blowing up reset upon reset here of Space Station Gaming. When it's all done, the only
can't even get Glaurung.
The only man to stand is no one. Roll20 just said not today. They're moving up with this Immortal, which is still alive.
That wasn't, man, that was even a stacking of Sank and Sound Barrier, and Roll20 decimated Space Station.
Everyone,
complete wipe.
Ever wonder what happens when you run a triple squishy composition without getting your Divine Shield off on time? Because that was pretty quick. Like, you just saw everybody was like, well, we are dead. Roll20, they did the math. They walk away, perfect timing. The Immortal gets themselves a keep. They got the 2-level lead. This is, I mean, let's be real here. It's just, will Spacestation Gaming be able to find a way to come back?
Watch this again. The Rain of Vengeance following up. The Sanctification was just so good. Roll20 playing with their food a little bit. Even Glaurung looked like a possible kill. Just one kill for Casanova, and he gets chased away.
So now Spacestation Gaming, down to 13, they have to do the sad thing we often talk about, where you kind of got to go, what fight can I take? What is realistically our best opportunity? And depending on the Immortal spawning, timing, health, where it is, there's a few variables that come into play with this window. It's most likely going to be with that 13. But to be frank, with the way that Roll20 is just kind of not respecting any part of this game whatsoever, I don't know if Spacestation's going to make it to that point. Between, you know, again, playing without Equinox here, playing with the Kel'Thuzad, it just feels like it is added up to a not-so-successful formula here against a team like Roll20.
Especially on such an unforgiving battleground.
Yeah.
It's Battlefield of Eternity. You've got the 2 lanes. Roll20 is just running rampant around it now that they've gotten that one team fight. They're just about everywhere. Dahaka's in the top lane pushing back, talking trees. Does a lot of damage to him, too.
I have a kind of a bit of a cool thought process here that I'm just more, again, I don't really know for a fact here. But would you rather a non-master touched Medivh or a non-blighted Kel'Thuzad on your team? At this point in time in this game, like if you could swap that out Medivh, would you take it?
I think I would rather have the non-blighted.
Hold up. There's a big void.
There's the void. Got the Frost Nova underneath and all the damage, but Sound Barrier, and everybody is safe. Sanctification too, but the Divine Shield and Dragon Blade, even still, all of Spacestation very low in health as Roll20 stands strong together, taking down 2.
I just want everybody to remember that though you may be witnessing the slaughter here of Spacestation Gaming, that they did something that nobody else in North America was willing to, Gilly. They Zodded. And that's what we got to keep, that they ventured far enough to pick the Zod. They've made miracles happen here. I'm pleased.
And they were willing to fight down 13. They know that it is a really hard situation that they're in this Battlefield of Eternity game. They were still willing to fight down that talent tier. We don't often see that. Willing to take that risk. Unfortunately for them, it didn't work out for them, and they are likely to lose another Immortal. They're about to be down 4 talent tiers, but this is kind of what happens when you get team wiped early on Battlefield of Eternity.
I mean, this Immortal, pretty solid to call this one game. The minute that ends up going down, walking away with 80 HP there, very calculated for Buds, even eating all 3 auto attacks and still knowing it'd fall on 80. They're going to back, they receive full HP, full mana, get the 16, lock it in, call it a GG. That is all Roll20's thinking right now. And I just don't see a window where Spacestation can stop it. They're trying. They're getting aggressive. You can still respect this here. At least Spacestation, I just always appreciate that they're just giving their all here. It's grim, it's improbable, but it's the best thing they can do.
That was really great by Glaurung to run away from Justing so that he didn't get chained together with that. Glaurung is one of the more squishy targets for Kel'Thuzad to try to burst down. We see the Void Prison go down as the Immortal flies across the screen, ready to head toward that very low health keep of Spacestation. And the end, most likely, of Game 1.
I usually try to avoid this, but this is it. This is donezo. Once the Void dropped, there is about 0 defensive tactics that Spacestation Gaming can throw out here. At 4-level deficit, they just lost themselves a Zeratul. Roll20 is doing what they need to keep this top seed in the North American scene, and that is just promptly putting away their opponents here, and they're done effectively so. It's going to be, what, about 14 minutes here on Battlefield of Eternity, as they're just cleaning shop.
Yep, Justing makes a safe zone, a safe haven for the rest of the team to run into with Sanctification as they wait out Casanova's Dragon Blade. With that, cleaning shop. 4 kills and a holy ground to stop Tiger JK from doing anything remotely possible to stop this game from ending right here, right now. Roll20 takes the game.
How many more Zods? That was one, and it wasn't pretty. Do we still see it busted out for Spacestation? I hope so. That's what I hope to see continue, especially if they are playing without Equinox here, knowing that other than directly impacting Roll20, right? I mean, might as well at least, again, it's kind of free practice. The fact that you get to be able to scrim against a team like Roll20 in an environment like this. So hopefully we still see them trying to gain something out of this in some way, shape, or form. But I really do feel, at least from my perspective, the minute that I see Equinox out, it's like we need to be learning, right? Even though they are one of the few teams that still can impact the standings, it just feels maybe that's a bit too far out, and they should be setting their sights towards playoffs, like honestly a majority of the teams.
Yeah, they know that their first opponent, they being Space Station, will be superstars. So it's a kind of a weird ordeal because, yeah, they don't have Equinox, so they're shifting around some of the roles. Casanova's not playing Warrior because Daihu is in that same role, but they want to be practicing and they want to be set up. And for teams, that works one of two ways. You either try out some strategies, you try out your best, you want to put your all in so that you can get the best practice possible out of a team like Roll20. But on the other hand, you want to be able to bring something surprising, have something up your sleeve, especially for Space Station, who is going to have to play and win 3 series next weekend if they're going to make it to HGC Finals.
Yeah, it's a big task ahead of them, and I'm not confident whether or not they'll be able to, because some of those teams standing above them have looked only better and better and better as HGC North America has gone on. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Space Station, they have had their climb. It's just kind of, it's even harder now, right? Without having them here, it's like kind of, well, how will they be able to perform? But they're usually the team with the wild pick, right? With Equinox going off onto his flex, whatever hero that's going to be. And that, I feel like, might be the biggest tool that they are going to rely on in the playoffs. If they're going to be successful, I feel without a doubt it's just Equinox Flare came in and it was successful every single game. And
that may be why we saw the first Kel'Thuzad be on Space Station. They do like those wild picks. We talked to a lot of the EU and NA players of what they thought of Kel'Thuzad, so including Talking Trees from Space Station. So let's hear what they had to say.
Hide in the shadows.